قالوا وأقبلوا عليهم ماذا تفقدون.
Turning back, they asked, "What have you lost?"
قالوا نفقد صواع الملك ولمن جاء به حمل بعير وأنا به زعيم.
The officials said, "We have lost the king's cup." And their chief added, "He who brings it shall have a camel load of provisions. I guarantee that."
قالوا تالله لقد علمتم ما جئنا لنفسد في الأرض وما كنا سارقين.
They said, "By Allah, you certainly know that we did not come to act corruptly in this land, nor are we those who steal."
قالوا فما جزاؤه إن كنتم كاذبين.
The officials said, "If you are lying, what will be the penalty for him who has stolen?"
قالوا جزاؤه من وجد في رحله فهو جزاؤه كذلك نجزي الظالمين.
They replied, "He on whose saddlebag the cup is found, he himself shall be its recompense. Thus do we punish the wrongdoers."
58. It should be kept in mind that these people were the descendants of Prophet Abraham. Therefore they put forward his law regarding a thief, that is, the thief should be made the bondsman of the one whose goods he had stolen.
فبدأ بأوعيتهم قبل وعاء أخيه ثم استخرجها من وعاء أخيه كذلك كدنا ليوسف ما كان ليأخذ أخاه في دين الملك إلا أن يشاء الله نرفع درجات من نشاء وفوق كل ذي علم عليم.
Then Joseph, peace be upon him, began searching their bags before searching his own brother's bag. Then he brought forth the drinking cup from his brother's bag. Thus did we contrive to support Joseph, peace be upon him. He had no right, according to the religion of the king, i.e. the law of Egypt, to take his brother unless Allah so willed. We will exalt whomsoever we will over others by several degrees. And above all those who know is the one who truly knows.
5:9. Now let us consider the question, how did Allah directly support Prophet Joseph with his plan? It is obvious that the plan of placing the cup in Benjamin's pack was thought out and executed by Joseph himself. And it is also obvious that the royal servants checked their packs as a matter of routine, for such is the procedure that is generally followed on such occasions. There is nothing in this passage that might be called supernatural support by Allah except that the servants asked the brothers to prescribe the punishment for the thief, and they answered that he should be made a bondsman. The sentence that follows also confirms this interpretation. 60. Had Allah willed it, he would not have removed the flaw in the plan of Prophet Joseph. It was this: he could seize his brother according to his plan only by the help of the king's law, but it was not worthy of a prophet of Allah to apply that un-Islamic law to his own personal case. For he had taken political power in his hands in order to establish gradually the Islamic law and not to enforce and keep the king's law in vogue. Had Allah willed it, he would have left no other course for his prophet except to have resort to the un-Islamic law. But he did not will it so because he did not like to tarnish the fair name of his prophet. Therefore he made the servants inquire from the brothers, an unusual thing, about the punishment of a thief, and they stated the law of Prophet Abraham. Thus not only was the flaw removed, but also no room was left for the brothers to raise any objection against this on the plea that they were not Egyptians, and therefore the law of the land could not be applied against them. As has already been pointed out, this was the support of Allah to which he has referred in the two subsequent verses as a token of his favor and a sign of the perfection of his knowledge. The favor of Allah was that he saved Prophet Joseph from applying the un-Islamic law of the king of Egypt to his personal case, for he was liable to do so under the stress of human weakness. And there can be no greater favor for one than this, that Allah himself should arrange to guard his high moral position. It should, however, be noted that such a high rank is awarded only to those who prove themselves to be righteous in very hard trials. By removing the flaw in his plan, Allah showed that his knowledge was far superior to the knowledge of those whom, like Prophet Joseph, he had endowed with knowledge. In this connection, there are some other points worthy of consideration and we will deal with them briefly. 1. Generally the words are translated like this: Joseph could not seize his brother by the law of the king, or Joseph was not authorized to seize his brother according to the law of the king. In other words, it means, he could not do this, as there was no provision for it in the king's law. Whereas it means this: he ought not to have seized him by the king's law, as it did not behoove him to do so. This version is open to two objections. Firstly, this is against the Quranic usage, which usually means, it did not behoove him, it was not right for him and he ought not to have done this. For instance, this is what it means in the following verses. Indeed, Islam alone is the right way in the sight of Allah. Surah Al-Imran, Ayat 18. Whosoever will adopt any other way than the way of Islam, it shall not be accepted. Surah Al-Imran, Ayat 85. Secondly, such a version is meaningless, for there could have been no reason why he had not the power to seize him for theft according to the law of the king. Can there be any kingdom without having a law for taking action against a thief? 2. As the Quran uses the word which connotes the king's way of life in addition to the king's law, it helps to understand the meaning of the sentence under discussion. For it is obvious that the Prophet was sent to establish the way of Allah and not the un-Islamic way of the king. Though by that time he had only partially succeeded in this mission, it was not proper and worthy of a prophet to adopt the way of the king for his own personal case. Though there was no legal hindrance in his way to seize his brother according to the king's law, nevertheless, it was inappropriate for him, as a prophet, to adopt the king's way which he had hitherto scrupulously avoided as far as his own person was concerned. Thus it is clear that its appropriate interpretation will be this: it did not behoove Joseph to seize his brother by the king's law. 3. Besides this, by using the word for the law of the land, Allah has denoted the vast comprehension of the word deen, and this cuts at the root of the conception of deen of those people who confine the scope of the message of the prophets to mere worship of one Allah and believe that it has nothing to do with the cultural, political, social, judicial, legal and other mundane affairs of life. Or, they opine that, if at all it has any concern with those matters, it is merely to give some instructions of an optional nature in regard to these, and leave it to the believers to adopt these or their own man-made laws, because, they think, there is no harm even in adopting the latter course. This erroneous conception of deen, which has been in vogue among the Muslims for a long time, has been responsible for rendering them neglectful of making exertions for the establishment of the Islamic way of life. As a result of this misconception of deen, they became reconciled to un-Islamic ways of unbelief and ignorance. Nay, they considered this misconception of theirs to be the pattern set by Prophet Joseph and became willing helpers and servants of these un-Islamic systems. Whereas this verse categorically refutes this misconception by declaring that the law of the land is as much a part of the deen of Allah as Salat, Hajj, fast, and Zakat are. Therefore, the demand of the acceptance of ad-Din made in Ayat 19 and Ayat 85 of Surah Al-Imran, that is, indeed, Islam alone is the right way, in the sight of Allah, and, whosoever will adopt any other way than the way of Islam, it shall not be accepted, includes laws as well as salat and other obligatory duties prescribed by Allah. Therefore the exclusion of this part of deen from any system would incur the displeasure of Allah. 4. The above interpretation, however, is open to one objection. It does, at least, imply that an un-Islamic way was in vogue in Egypt at the time, when Prophet Joseph was, even according to the present commentator, the supreme head of the country. It is, therefore, a proof that that prophet himself was enforcing the un-Islamic law of the king. What difference, then, could it have made, if Prophet Joseph had followed, in his personal case too, the system of law of the king which he himself was enforcing instead of the system of law of Prophet Abraham? Most certainly this would have made a vast difference, because it would have compromised his position as a prophet, because he was trying to establish the Islamic way of life, which naturally could have been accomplished gradually in course of time, during which the king's law would have inevitably remained in vogue. The same thing happened in Arabia during the mission of the Prophet. Peace be upon him, in Al-Madinah, which took 9 years to establish the Islamic system in its entirety. During that period, several un-Islamic laws remained in vogue. For instance, drinking, interest, the un-Islamic laws of inheritance and marriage, and some wrong ways of trade, etc., had to continue for some time. Likewise, the civil and penal codes of Islam took some time for their complete introduction. So there is nothing strange in this that the king's law continued to be in vogue during the first 9 years or so of Prophet Joseph's reign. But the continuance of the un-Islamic law of the king during the period of transition is no argument to prove that Allah's Prophet was sent to follow the way of the king and not to establish the way of Allah.
قالوا إن يسرق فقد سرق أخ له من قبل فأسرها يوسف في نفسه ولم يبدها لهم قال أنتم شر مكانا والله أعلم بما تصفون.
They said, "No wonder that he steals for a brother of his stole before." But Joseph, peace be upon him, kept his reaction to himself without disclosing the truth to them. He merely said to himself, "You are an evil lot. Allah knows well the truth of the accusation that you are making against me, to my face."
61. As regards to the question why it was not worthy of Prophet Joseph to apply the king's law to his personal case, its best answer is again found in the practice of the Prophet, peace be upon him. During the interim period, when the laws of ignorance had not yet been replaced by Islamic laws, other Muslims went on drinking wine and taking interest as before, but the Prophet, peace be upon him, never practiced any of these things. Likewise, some un-Islamic laws of marriage, such as taking in marriage of real sisters at one and the same time, were practiced, but the Prophet, peace be upon him, never practiced any such thing. Thus it is clear that there was a difference between leaving in vogue some un-Islamic laws during the period of the evolution of the Islamic law and practicing the same. Had Prophet Joseph applied the king's law to his own case, it would have meant that he had lent his seeming sanction to that law. But it is obvious that a prophet, who is sent to eliminate the ways of ignorance, cannot follow these even under the temporary leave that is given to others. Their position and dissociated themselves from Benjamin, declaring that he was a thief like his brother Joseph. It is obvious that this was a false accusation the clever brothers had invented on the spot. But it is an instance of the malice these brothers bore to their two stepbrothers, and is also the answer to the question why Prophet Joseph desired to keep his brother with him.
قالوا يا أيها العزيز إن له أبا شيخا كبيرا فخذ أحدنا مكانه إنا نراك من المحسنين.
They said, "O powerful chief, Al-Aziz, his father is an age-stricken man, and in order that he may not suffer, seize one of us in his stead. We indeed consider you an excellent person."
62. The use of the title Al-Aziz, ruler of the land, with which they addressed Prophet Joseph has given rise to the confusion that he held the same office as the husband of Zuleika held before him. Then this misunderstanding led the commentators to the invention of further comments, such as, Al-Aziz had died and Prophet Joseph was appointed in his place, and Zuleika was rejuvenated by a miracle and was married to him by the king. They have not stopped at this. They have, somehow or other, discovered even the conversation that took place between Prophet Joseph and Zuleika in the first night of their marriage. In fact, all this is mere fiction, for, as has already been pointed out, the word Al-Aziz was the Arabic translation or equivalent of some Egyptian title, and was not the designation of any particular office. It was merely a title used for the high ones in Egypt like, His Excellency, or, Your Excellency, etc. As regards to the said marriage, this fiction has been built on the story of Prophet Joseph's marriage in the Bible and the Talmud. According to these, he was married with Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera. As the name of the husband of Zuleika was Potiphar, the two names got confused together. Accordingly, when the story was handed down from the traditions of the Israelites from one commentator to the other, the name Potiphar got interchanged with Potiphera because the two were so like each other in sound. Consequently, the daughter in the story was replaced by wife. Then Potiphar was killed in order to facilitate the marriage. Then the only remaining difficulty, that is, the disparity of their ages, was gotten over with the help of a miracle. She was rejuvenated so completely as to enable her to become the worthy wife of the ruler of the land.
قال معاذ الله أن نأخذ إلا من وجدنا متاعنا عنده إنا إذا لظالمون.
Joseph, peace be upon him, said, Allah forbid that we should seize any except him with whom we found our good. Were we to do so, we would surely be one of the wrongdoers.
63. The use of the words, with whom we have found our property, instead of the word thief is very significant. Prophet Joseph avoided the use of the word thief for his brother because he was not really a thief. This is called turiya, that is, to put a cover over a reality or to hide a reality. Such a practice is allowed by the Muslim law under certain conditions and with certain limitations. It may be practiced not to gain any selfish end, but to ward off some evil or to protect and save an oppressed person from some oppressor, provided that no other course might have been left except saying something against the truth or of having a resort to a deceitful device. It is obvious that in such a case, a righteous person will not tell a blunt lie or resort to an open deceit. Instead, he will say something or do something that might not be strictly truthful or strictly right, yet at the same time is not a blunt lie, so that he might hide the reality to ward off the evil. Such a practice is lawful, legally and morally, provided that it is not practiced to gain some personal or selfish ends but to ward off a greater evil with a lesser evil. Accordingly, Prophet Joseph scrupulously fulfilled all the conditions in this case. He placed the cup in the pack of his brother with his consent, but he did not ask his servants to make a search of his pack and accuse him of theft. After this, when the servants brought the brothers before him as suspects, he quietly rose from his seat and began to make a search of their packs. Then afterwards, when the brothers requested that one of them should be taken instead of Benjamin, he answered them back in their own words that he would detain only that person in whose possession the cup was found and none else. Instances of such a practice during his campaigns are found in the life history of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And this cannot be regarded as morally objectionable according to any moral or legal standard.
فَلَمَّا اسْتَيْأَسُوا مِنْهُ خَلَصُوا نَجِيًّا قال كبيرهم ألم تعلموا أن أباكم قد أخذ عليكم موثقا من الله ومن قبل ما فرطتم في يوسف فلن أبرح الأرض حتى يأذن لي أبي أو يحكم الله لي وهو خير الحاكمين.
Then, when they had despaired of Joseph, peace be upon him, they went to a corner and counseled together. The eldest of them said, "Do you not know that your father has taken a solemn promise from you in the name of Allah, and you failed in your duty towards Joseph, peace be upon him? So I will not depart from this land until my father permits me, or Allah pronounces his judgment in my favor. He is the best of those who judge."
ارجعوا إلى أبيكم فقولوا يا أبانا إن ابنك سرق وما شهدنا إلا بما علمنا وما كنا للغيب حافظين.
So go back to your father and tell him, "Father, your son has certainly been guilty of stealing. We did not see him stealing, but testify according to what we know. And obviously we had no power to keep watch over that what is altogether hidden from us."